Welcome to Demand Gen Confidential, the marketing podcast where we'll be talking with some of the most progressive marketers out there, diving deep into marketing tactics to help you become a better marketer. Let's jump into today's episode. You've been golfing since 12, I think you said?
7.
7. Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah. My neighbor has their son in golf lessons because he's gotten into golf quite a bit.
That's awesome. I feel like it's been growing across like the younger generations, the more and more like people I see and interact with. And I know my parents were keen on it growing up because for my age group, they were like, there's so many scholarships that are going to waste because of girls golf. And so my dad was like, let's get you into golf and you can pay yourself through college. And so that was his whole game plan. And it worked. I did get a year of college out of it. I decided to go a different direction, but yeah, it was still a really cool experience.
Where did you play at school?
Cal State, Monterey Bay.
Okay. My financial advisor played there as well.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So he was a big
That's
golfer.
a small world.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of cliche being in finance and playing golf, but hey, it's
a necessary evil.
Yeah.
I feel like and that was the other thing, like growing up, my dad was like, this is the best thing. You use it in your career and professional development. I have to say I've yet to use this in my industry, but maybe one day, who knows?
Yeah, I don't run into that many tech people. There's AEs that golf, but outside of that, I don't run into very many people in tech that golf. It's just not a sport. I think everybody's like not old school enough to do that. But I did, out of school, my first job, I started out in sales, and the company I worked for, they really pushed golfing with your clients. And I got so excited. I was like, oh, clients are going to want to go golfing. Like, this is going to be awesome. Nobody wanted to go hang with you for 4 hours during the middle of the day to golf. I guess
that's so true. Yeah, and it's like a full day affair. My husband recently just got into this and he's, you know what? I have so much more respect for you now because this is a long game to keep active for the whole time and engaged. 9 holes seems to make a lot more sense. He gets a couple of hours, you can stay committed to it, but he's once we pass 9, I'm disengaged and his game just goes off a cliff. So he always blames that it's just too long. But yeah, I think in the professional world, it's just the continued evolution of like how dynamics are changing and everybody's used to like getting on a quick Zoom call for 30 minutes or maybe meeting up for dinner or something. And golf just doesn't really fit that bill anymore.
Yeah, I do have another friend. He's also in finance and they golf all the time. He golfs pretty regularly because the people selling him his funds that he should invest in take him out to golf and he always says yes. So he's golfed like Pebble Beach and stuff. He was going down to Pebble Beach during COVID because you didn't have to do the two night minimum stay. You could just play the course, which
that's a dream.
He took advantage of. But yeah, he's the only person of recent that I've heard that does a lot of client golfing. And he's just taking advantage of the perks.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I would too. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to convince marketers to get out on the golf course. Who knows?
Too many creatives. I guess, I don't know.
True.
But not that creative people don't golf, but yeah, it's not so much a strictly relationship business like some sales is.
Yeah, for sure.
At any rate, why don't we just get into it? I'll do a quick introduction and we can just start chatting about some marketing and figure out what in today's world we should be doing to be better marketers. So I'm here with Brianna. She's director of digital advertising at Closed Loop, performance marketing agency that partners with high growth brands to scale revenue. She knows the balance of brand and performance sides of marketing to help companies scale in competitive markets, shifting budgets, and navigating AI, which are all the topics we're going to talk about today. Brianna, is there anything else that you would like the audience to know about you?
I think you pretty much covered it. Thank you.
Awesome. So when we were doing the prep for this, when I asked you what topics are hot right now, and you told me marketing teams getting squeezed. Like it is the big squeeze right now. I worked for a company where we sold the HR. Well, I sell the HR now, and we talked a lot about the manager squeeze in there. And I feel like now it was the middle manager squeeze, and now we can now shift that talking point to the marketer squeeze. How should we think about navigating this squeeze in the current environment?
Yeah, I think it's a challenging time to be a marketer. I've experienced a couple evolutions of just the economy and how that's impacted marketing teams. And I think right now it's just like we're in that contractionary point of time where, you know, one of the first line items to go is marketing because it's off, most often the biggest line item on a company's spreadsheet. And so ultimately, that leads to reduced budgets, operating on really lean teams, but the goals never change. So it's basically playing from behind because you're ultimately under a ton of pressure to make sure that you keep the budget that you have and reach the goals to continue to grow the health of the company and keep it sustainable. So now I think it's important to really focus on the things that are working in your marketing strategy, but not to deter from creating an unequal balance between like performance and brand. Because more often than not, like brand marketing specifically is where companies will cut because it's harder to measure. There's not tangible results associated with it. When a CFO looks at the spreadsheet and says, we spent $5 million on this brand initiative, what did we get out of it? And your answer is basically, we drove this many impressions and clicks. And it's really hard to speak their language sometimes. And they don't ultimately see the long term value that a lot of us marketers know and understand. But not to say like it isn't important. I think having a balanced marketing strategy as much as you can between performance and brand is ultimately going to help you in the long term.
Yeah, like, and it's wild that budgets are getting cut. I mean, we'll just say it's cut, like not even just shaved, but just straight up cut. And
Mhm.
costs are skyrocketing. Like every platform. Like, I mean, and the free ones, like email, is constantly doing worse. It's, I mean, my open rates haven't been this low since I was a novice marketer just learning email marketing, and it's across the board. And and so it's just this whole environment of like having to move in that direction. And I want to talk about the measuring brand piece because that is super interesting. And so I've talked with two people on the podcast that have had interesting takes on this. One, I worked with him and he was talking about the split of budget that he would recommend people have on paid brand. And I'll want to get your take on it. And then I'll go into the second person. I think his was, I'd have to go back and listen, but I think it was like 40, he wants 40% of paid budget on brand and
Mhm.
then 60 on direct response. Like, do you have a percentage split that you think about as, at least initial guidance? Like, I mean, I don't want to have to pin you to a number specific, but
Yeah, honestly, I would agree with that number. That's typically the number that we shoot for as far as a breakout. So 40% on brand and then 60% on direct response. When we throw that number out to a lot of our clients, their eyes, they get the deer in the headlight look just because usually their marketing budget is not allocated like that. It's maybe 10% brand and 90% direct response. So they get a little nervous when they see that. And I think it's a lot, of course, easier to navigate that conversation when their company is growing, their revenue looks healthy, the pipeline is healthy. And so you can have typically a better and more constructive conversation. But in a market like this where things are really lean, ultimately it's more challenging to get to that breakout point. But where I usually come from in a situation like we're experiencing now is what can you commit to that's consistent? And then we come up with an idea of what potentially fits from like a channel and campaign strategy within that limit, because there needs to be some sort of consistency when it comes to brand, because brand is a long-term play. It's something that's going to pay dividends down the road and not immediately like direct responses.
Mhm.
But ultimately, it takes time to be able to measure it. So if initially they say, yeah, we can commit to maybe 10% of our budget going to brand at first, or 15%, and all of a sudden their hands start to get a little sweaty, because they see it as a trade-off as far as moving money away from direct response, where they could be driving leads, they could be driving tangible results or at bats that could potentially turn into pipeline. But the level of consistency is incredibly important, because that's how we can measure long term. It's not like you can turn it on and see instant results. It's like blending the metrics over time and seeing like the blended CAC improve is ultimately what we're shooting for. But a lot of the brand initiatives that we run, depending upon the length of the sales cycle, if it's really long, like I've worked with clients that have like 3 to 6 month sales cycles. We typically recommend at least something that lasts for the full duration, if not 2 complete sales cycles.
Yeah, it is a nervous spot to get into with brand. And I want to touch on that because I spoke to a scientist on the show as well. And I did that because like I have this theory right now, especially in the current environment, with not only just with getting squeezed, but measurement becoming more difficult. Like you have some cookie tracking that gets a little more difficult, all of that. And just thinking about measuring
Mhm.
more like a scientist, where you're creating control and test groups, I think is what they're called. Like, I don't know, I'm blanking.
Mhm.
But so for the brand stuff, you're sending your brand campaign out there, and then you're measuring a laggard number and testing it so that you can see uplift in this whole situation. And it's almost like making marketing more science based,
Mhm.
which is I think the play in brand. I'm not too sure though. Like you'd have to kind of test it out. But that's like what I'm mulling over after having spoken to her. And it's not that easy.
It isn't easy. And I honestly think measurement can be as complicated as you want it to be, but there's not a one size fit all solution. And I don't think it's going to be simple in B2B across any specific measurement solution or setup. But I have done geo holdout tests in the past where you run a specific play, you try to identify two like geo markets that look relatively similar.
Mhm.
You run a brand campaign in one, you don't in the other, and ultimately you try to measure the differences between the two and how it ultimately impacts the metrics down funnel. But something interesting that I've done even more recently is we always looked at traffic first, where it was like, you'd monitoring Google Analytics, is there a lift in some of the direct and organic traffic? But now that's even getting more grainy because we have AI in the mix. And a lot of what we're seeing is direct traffic is decreasing, or people are talking about, your brand on dark channels that has zero attribution, like a community Slack channel, or they're listening on a podcast. So when we look even further beyond traffic, you can basically identify, okay, we started to increase spend on brand initiatives, like let's say in January. Um, and then over time, you start to measure, okay, these are the metrics, the MQLs, the SQLs, the opportunities or SQL opportunities, and then the close one deals that came from paid. But then you also correlate that with organic and direct. And you're trying to see, is there a correlation between the two over time based upon when you started ramping up more of your initiatives from the brand side? So what you're trying to really see is the cost per blended metrics improving over time, which is essentially telling you that while we're investing in brand, um, are we seeing our blended metrics become more efficient? Is our performance marketing becoming more efficient? And then from a volume perspective, paid is going to fluctuate typically with the amount of investment in direct response, a lot of different market factors and stuff at play. But ultimately, are you seeing even more volume over time? Are you seeing more volume from direct and organic MQLs, opportunities, et cetera? And sometimes based upon that correlation, you can see ultimately the impact your brand marketing is having on your overall sales funnel.
So are most people, I shouldn't say most, but maybe are you advising clients on the on the blended spend? I think you said blended metrics, or like blended CAC or whatever you want to call it, whatever the
Yeah.
person's metric is. Like, is that where you're looking at advising clients on how like they should think about some of this stuff more than just direct response? I mean, obviously you have to have both in the mix.
It de- it depends just
Okay.
based upon what the client has at their disposal. Some of the larger clients that we work with do have the luxury of spending some of their budget on a multi-touch attribution tool or but all of those solutions are typically very costly. And a lot of the smaller clients don't have the same luxury. So like one will typically if a client has a multi-touch attribution tool, we'll incorporate that with our strategy and a lot of our decision making just because we don't use it like as a concrete decision maker. It's more directional, right? Because multi-touch attribution tools, the way it gets a little sticky because you get to define what gets the credit. It's always the trade-off. It's like, how do we
Yeah.
know that Google's worth more than LinkedIn? Or how do we know? So it's still largely up to your discretion, but ultimately we look at it to understand the customer journey a little bit better, try to see really what's working, and then use that directional insight for like strategic decision making.
Yeah. And then, sorry, I don't even know.
Media mixed model.
Oh, Media Mix model. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I should know that, but I don't.
Hey, I honestly, those are definitely in the weeds. They are very complex, but more like statistical analysis kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I've never worked for a company where we've gone to that granularity. We're just trying to get direct response to work at a decent
Mhm.
and predictable clip is basically
Yeah.
the idea. So brand influencing performance. What's like an example of brand campaigns that you would see, or like how would you structure one of those where you're like, okay, I think this is going to help improve performance marketing and we should maybe structure it like this, like these are some of the elements that we should have.
Yeah, I think when it comes to brand, like brand can get expensive very quickly, and there's so many different ways to approach it. It's
Sure.
depending upon the client's budget. If they're a company and have millions of dollars to spend, then we'll look at potentially approaching CTV options. Otherwise, it's what are the channels do we feel like our audience is actively engaged on? And we have the targeting capability that we feel like we can reach them efficiently. And of course, like factoring in budget from there. So it comes between those different factors, and then that helps us to narrow down our options. Um, and I think the biggest thing with brand is ultimately when we're discussing brand, a lot of the creative piece comes into play. Search marketing, there are top of funnel and mid funnel campaign types and ad formats that you can use, but a lot of brand marketing is ultimately going to be tied to storytelling. And that's where you're really like producing high quality creative that you know is speaking to your audience's pain points. It's telling the story of your brand. It's trying to build that emotional connection where someone will be able to know and recognize you. And ultimately, it builds that mental availability and that brand recall that when it comes time to consider a new solution that you are in that initial consideration set.
Yeah, the mental availability term I've started to see come up more often. I don't know, is it like are is that like something newish that marketers are kind of like trying to think about in terms of, the kind of the out of market piece? I've noticed it on LinkedIn a little bit more now, and you just mentioned it.
Yeah, I think it's been there, but it's definitely becoming more prevalent as we're trying to understand like how we can be more in the initial consideration set, especially when so many people now are adopting AI and using that in their research phase. It's how do we show up before then so we're still top of mind and in that initial consideration set. And I think it ties into the age old rule of the 95-5 rule that basically states that at any given time, only 5% of your target audience is actually in market to make a purchase, and the other 95% are not in market.
Mhm.
And so you ultimately want to be able to capture the demand of the 5%. But for those 95%, it's really building that mental availability because there's a lot of research out there that says if you are not in that initial consideration set, which typically companies have a short list of 3 to 5 on that consideration set, then you're not going to be basically considered at all. And the chances of you actually winning that customer is exponentially higher if you're on that short list. So that's why it's important to really start building that mental availability to make sure you're on the list.
Yeah, and in that kind of vein with building mental availability, trying to keep some emotional connection, it's so tempting in when you're getting squeezed to just go to AI and be like, write me my ad copy and my video script and put it out. Like, how do you keep the human element? How do you stay away from that temptation and keep the human element at the center of your marketing right now?
Yeah, it's tricky because I think marketers are basically infatuated with the capability of AI. It's totally rocked everyone's world where it's just
Yeah.
like, I get asked about it on a daily basis. Everybody's, we can make this so much more efficient. We can cut costs, yada, right? The uses for it are infinite. And we see how easy it is to use. And it's basically mind-boggling. How I try to use it, of course, there's a bunch of different types of AI, but if we're speaking about ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, any of those, for example, I try to use it like I always try to come with an idea in mind. So I'm trying to think of the tone that I want to come across, the story that I want to tell, the emotion that I want to evoke, and basically give it I write something first and then have it iterate from there and polish it essentially, or even just have it give prompt me with ideas, but then I take it and I write it. It's putting my own personal touch on whatever I'm trying to get out of it. Otherwise, I have seen it like I'll use it in different capacities as far as helping me arrange my thoughts or like even come up with like speaker notes if I'm doing a presentation or something like that. And oftentimes it'll miss the mark because it doesn't understand like the story that I'm trying to tell. So I think it's important to keep that in mind first and come to it with already like something in your head that you're already building and you just want it to enhance the ideas that you have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And actually I had this thought earlier this year as people were, really getting into AI and AI writing, and I started doing this, but I basically like decided like the last frontier of automation to keep something human that is human is conversations like this. So it's like prioritizing the customer conversations and getting them on video so that like people know that it's real. And then you can take the transcripts and use AI to format them in all sorts of different things. Like I just had a customer webinar I did, and the webinar itself is all recorded and everything. Cut AI's helping cut it up for like 16 clips, doing helping with a written case study, a slide for everything, and all the asset creation of reformatting can be done with AI. But
Mhm.
the core of something personal and the story being told is there. Like I like that, and then using AI to enhance it, like, because I think there's
Yeah,
also
for
just a
sure.
lot of fear of AI, especially for marketers, or some of us, like, what it
Totally.
can do.
Yeah, and honestly, I think human connection is going to become infinitely more valuable in the future because we're already seeing that start to teeter, right? We've been using Zoom meetings and you get like loosely that kind of human connection. We do a lot of our work over email and Slack but I don't think anything really replaces that one-to-one human connection and building that authenticity into it. I think for a lot of agencies, the ones that are investing in in-person stuff, because at CloseLoop, we really try to act as an extension of their own internal marketing team. And oftentimes those marketing teams are in an office somewhere. So they see
Mhm.
each other every day, they're interacting with each other, and they're building a lot of the relationship outside of what you just see on Zoom or Slack. And agencies that invest in doing the in person meetings, taking clients out to dinner, really just like continuing to foster that relationship is going to become more important because we're going to start seeing AI, less human connection. And I think that's where we're really going to see the shift.
Yeah, I mean, and you see some of that, like you're talking about it from the agency to client side, but you even see it for marketers running events. Like, I mean, events are back, and whether
Mhm.
that's trade shows or not, like I did a bunch of trade shows last year, and attendance was abysmal for most of the trade shows. They were only hitting like 70% of
Mm.
their attendance numbers, but individual like hosted events are a big deal, and running those types as
Yeah,
well, just to
absolutely.
try
I've
and
been
get that.
to Yeah, for sure. I think I've been to a couple conferences since COVID happened, and I do think there's so much value in just being able to talk to somebody standing right in front of you and being able to you don't maybe just talk about work, you get to know someone and you build that connection. And I think I'm hoping that we see more of that where people are going to start valuing that more because of all the shifts that we're seeing with AI.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be that shift. And I say there has to be because I actually think in almost every conversation I've had like this, I bring up Jack White, but I'm a big Jack White fan. I don't know if I did in our prep call or not. Maybe I
You
did.
did, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I'm going after it again. But he talks about shifts in music going through like big periods of like, you had like hair metal in the 80s, and then all of a sudden it got, it was too big and too produced. So then it became simple again in the 90s, and
Yep.
became grunge, and then you got three-piece punk, and then you got his two-piece band, and then it got really big, then it gets big again, then it decreases, and so there's probably a little bit of that that's going to happen, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
for sure. I think we're gonna definitely see some shifts, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but right now it's like the new big shiny object that everybody just wants to know how to use.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all hot on GPT-5, and I mean, I don't know,
Mm.
I can't tell the difference. Just trying to get prompts that are decent.
I know I've used it, and I really can't tell the difference personally either, but it's not like I'm somebody who's like a developer and writing hard code. I don't know if the quality of code is different, but I still laugh at all of the stuff I've seen on LinkedIn where people will ask GPT-5 how many bees are in blueberry, and it comes back with 3. And you're like, see, this is the pitfall of AI. And it's good to keep that in mind. Um, but ultimately, it's like it is a tool. This is why we don't remove humans from the equation. Check your work, do all of the things instead of just relying on it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the LinkedIn stuff though, I get the sense that people aren't using it as much as they say they are when they're on there. Cause like when I'm using it, like if you're doing research and you're trying to get it
Mhm,
compiled for research, like it's a lot of work. Like
mhm.
I've talked about this a few times too. Like I find it to be a lot of work to get to something really good. And everybody's like, oh, it's so easy, like this, that, or the other. And I'm like, no, if you're really, using AI a lot or that kind of, I don't know, maybe people
Yeah.
aren't and I'm just slow. But
No, I think I've run into that as well. Like I used it for statistical analysis or something once, and I'm
oh
not
yeah.
I took a couple stats classes. I have a relative idea of it. But when you upload a spreadsheet of data and it's not taking in the factors that you wanted to consider, or you have to re-export the data to get it accurately represented, or it'll kick back responses that you don't want. And I've spent hours with that on the
Yeah.
statistical analysis side because it's just you're constantly having to go back with prompts to try to fix the initial issue, and sometimes it'll just skip over it entirely.
Yeah, that is one of the pitfalls. But since we're on this kind of AI topic, like how do you think about how do you balance the quick wins that you can get with AI, like, maybe helping you write ad copy for direct response versus balancing the long-term brand building portion? And we can include even like just customer research in that and thinking about
Mhm.
like having customer conversations. Like, what kind of balance do you talk to clients about in like thinking about their, this use of AI and how it's a shiny tool?
Yeah, I always advocate for the use of AI from an ideation perspective, or I would think if I'm about to use it, is this something I would feel comfortable outsourcing to someone else, just as
Mhm.
an example? Is this something that I feel like somebody else could take off my plate, not having as much context as I do? And that helps me to really assess, is this something I need to be a part of because I understand the audience better than the AI does? I understand the brand's tone and personality and emotion that I want to evoke in whatever content or creative I'm trying to produce. So I always use it as like more of an ideation piece of the puzzle. So I know a lot of our creative team, they'll use it for storyboarding and help to create different ideas, just like little pieces of the puzzle, like maybe thinking of like ideas they didn't think of before. But ultimately, it's if you really understand the brand personally and you know what you're trying to tell the story, evoke the emotion, then that's something where it's like I can use it to enhance my ideas, but I don't want it to take the reins completely.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I am curious. So this is kind of out of context of this, but as we were kind of coming through back to the point of you said earlier around direct traffic. So like
Mhm,
using traffic as a leading indicator and all of that. And you mentioned direct traffic is dropping for clients, at least you're seeing that. That is what you
mhm.
said, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how should we respond to that? Because I thought, like, at least initially with some of the AI search, people were like, "Oh, direct traffic's going up because they're searching for your brand," but now it's down. Like, what should marketers be thinking about in that lens?
Yeah, I think the direct traffic piece, it's interesting because Google search engines really in general, they're shifting how they're adopting AI, like not only in the PPC world, but just in the user experience from like an organic search perspective. So, when somebody's searching for something, they'll see an AI overview that pops up, and a lot of their questions are going to be answered
Mhm.
without them even needing to click. So, of course, that's more on the organic search side compared to direct, but AI has a role in that. And if you're searching in ChatGPT, give me the top 5 CRM solutions for an accounting firm or something like that, it's going to spit out 5 different brands and give you like pros and cons, a list of who would be the best fit for which kind of firm, et cetera. So I think ultimately it's going to become more important to create that mental availability to start looking at metrics like engagement or branded search interest over time,
Mhm.
because ultimately, like, there's been a lot of research done on that front as well, where brand search interest, there's a correlation with ultimately like impact to your sales funnel. So if you see branded search interest rising over time, that should ultimately impact your sales funnel positively, and then vice versa. So I think there are different factors at play that are maybe contributing to the decline in direct traffic, even like logistical stuff and more technical stuff as far as more states in the US and, of course, other countries are implementing stricter cookie policy and tracking laws. That's contributing to stuff as well. And so traffic is definitely shifting, and it's a lot more of a gray area as far as measurement is concerned. But ultimately, what I think brands should be focusing on is investing in high quality content or creative that's going to create memorable experiences to start building those like online relationships with people that hopefully will contribute to a rise in branded search interest over time.
Yeah, I mean that's an important point because the creating great content, because I mean social is clearly one of the, like it's always been big, but I think it's like even bigger now, like a bigger
Mhm.
portion of the mix. But one thing I saw in that was Rand Fishkin just put out a video about where search is happening, and YouTube is like way outpacing people, even AI search. And I was like, whoa, that's actually super surprising to me. And creating video content is a big deal
Mhm.
if you want to capture some of that, kind of the how to's. So, shifting to that mentality is probably a very big thing right now.
Yeah, 100%. I think video is great, and it's something we really advocate for at Close Loop because it does allow you to build in that storytelling piece where that falls off so significantly in static, where it's like you get one ad and a little bit of ad copy at the top, and that's your entire story, versus you can really start to build in some of the emotional pieces and build the story of your brand within a video creative.
Yeah. Well, good. So I do have one other AI related question, and it's just, do you have any interesting AI agents or workflows or use cases that you've either seen clients do or you're using that would be super helpful for marketers?
Yeah, I think for me personally, what I've done is I'll create an AI agent per client. Like, obviously, security, privacy concerns, like all of that is factored in. Relatively limited information, but I'll build an AI agent for each client because as in an agency world, sometimes it's hard to navigate between 5 different clients and switch gears and really have a solid understanding of all of them. So I'll use those primarily to really help me grasp their product, the audience's pain points, competitors. Like I can
Mm.
just use that as something that I can reach out to when I really want to get a better understanding of something that's specific to each client I work with.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like, I love AI for research. I don't know if you use, what do you build that agent with?
We
Is it,
use Copilot
oh,
just
right.
because I think there's like tighter security
Yeah.
surrounding that.
Yeah, there's a GPT in ChatGPT that's a competitive market analysis one that I love. That does,
Mhm.
I find it does quite a good job on research, and yeah, it's such a nice thing to have kind of compile in there, and you can kind of work through some interesting insights about a company or what have you. Well, good. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover or leave the audience with today?
Yeah, I think I would just encourage everyone in e- the kind of economy and market that we're in now, where marketers are forced to do more with less, that I would really discourage them away from viewing it as a trade-off between brand and performance marketing. Ultimately, they work together. Find something that fits your budget, your campaign strategy, that allows you to continue those efforts and do them consistently, because ultimately you're going to sacrifice long-term growth by not focusing on brand marketing.
Yeah, that's a good point. You gotta let the constraints era let you be more creative and not focus strictly on short-sighted. That's a good takeaway to leave everybody with. Great, Brianna. Where would you like people to connect with you?
Yeah, I am active on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with everyone there. I've been taking the stride of trying to post more and be more active on LinkedIn. That is where you can connect with me.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Brianna. I had a really great conversation today, and hopefully you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for having me on.